Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful individuals. It is another epi of LEC and Mark here with you guys for a little bit of global power ranking action. And I'll tell you right now from the get-go, this is the biggest movement we've got, at least on the upper half of that board. And that is usually the theme with how playoffs and best of fives rolling around and elimination matches coming into the limelight.
Never mind just playoffs, which are already a very good stage to start making some wild changes to these rankings. Playoffs matches between the top seeds with elimination on the line. That's where you really start to see some of these significant movers and shapers changing up here in the global power rankings. But let's dive right into it.
Yeah, it's a lot more heavily weighed when you have that head-to-head and elimination and a best of five. But we start at the bottom of that barrel where a squad holding on, NIP, DN Supers. We'll give one more shout-out to DNS for having a fantastic split, especially for the expectations that they had, beating the likes of KT, Nongshim to even get into this main playoff draw. And actually now, in hindsight, taking BNK to 5 games and taking a game off of D+ deserves an extra round of applause.
Yeah, and I think especially when you're talking about the DN Supers and the growth that we saw from them throughout that playoffs, I think that is the specific one that you can identify and really kind of hang your hat on moving towards the next split and anticipating and hoping to see more of that growth, more of that pushback against what is the established, teams that are ahead of them in the LCK pecking order. So I think that absolutely deserves some of that credit over to the DN Supers.
And here's to hopefully some continued growth for them in the next split to make an even more stacked upper half of the LCK. Then we get to the question of, okay, at times we've had a single LCS team on this list. I don't think we've had more than 2. We definitely haven't had 4, and that's where we're sitting today. And the question is, are there actual multiple good teams in the LCS? Because it's still a relatively small sample size, but, Sentinels hold on to the number 18 spot. They're still on the list, but Team Liquid and Lion Gaming, after a pair of clean 3-0s, jump ahead of Sentinels, which was what we were expecting heading into playoffs.
Yeah, and more so just reinsert themselves back into the expected positions, expected power level that you were envisioning when you saw these rosters being pieced together, and maybe a little bit less, when you're looking at where they're jumping over a squad like Sentinels, although I think with what we have seen on Rift and knowing a little bit more behind the scenes on the communication and all that's been taken, how that's being taken care of, and really a lion's share from ya boy Huhi down in the bottom lane going on for Sentinels, I think that you can envision these squads holding their position here, at least early in the year for these LCS teams to see where they are. Of course, going to need to see more throughout these LCS playoffs to bolster both of these type of squads in that situation. And of course, even further out, something like First Stand to see how the LCS and who they're sending compares up to the rest of the world.
And the America's Cup, the squads that aren't going to First Stand, it'll have their own kind of mini competition. But when you're looking at Lion and Team Liquid over the weekend, you're kind of pulling hairs about, okay, who had the better, more dominant 3-0. Both series were never really in question, but it's really personal preference, at least I think, early on here, who you have ahead of them. But luckily, we get the head-to-head this weekend, and that will be the real climb for who goes forward. But I think both of us would say whoever wins are going to be pretty sizable favorites over Sentinels.
Yeah, getting that type of advantage, getting that type of head-to-head really is going to push you again more so in that conversation where your sights are aimed towards the Cloud9 that has been dominating the LCS, as opposed to making sure you're taking care of your competition in this type of tier type of thing. So yeah, I think that will be the fallout from this matchup. The one thing I'm watching heading into this one that is giving me the edge towards Leon Gaming, I think, for me, I'm seeing a lot more of that inspired mojo and energy permeate through this entire roster, really to the core of this team, and start to build your identity and focus around that. I think that is absolutely going to be a power move for Leon Gaming.
Yeah, and listen, if you somehow get on the same page where Inspired is kind of directing everything and everyone's listening on the same page, working together, then that is the dream scenario that people probably pictured for this Lion Gaming squad if things are going well. Even though they had a slow start, we've seen the bounce back. So we'll see if General Inspired can lead the troops to that first stand berth. Movistar Koi ahead of those couple LCS squads, and they have had a topsy-turvy journey so far in this split. I mean, even looking directly at playoffs, they have these incredible dominant 2-0 against Na'Vi, where you're going, oh my god, this is the potential. These guys should be favorites for playoffs. And then they proceed to get swiftly stomped 3-0 by G2. And the ups and downs of this squad is not just this split, but really since JoJo joined the roster.
What the full healthcare situation is over in Europe, but I'm saying bill them for the motion sickness medicine that you're going to need, keeping track of how up and down, topsy-turvy, as you said, this Movistar Koi lineup has been. And no better case than that, than how they were stepping towards this playoff series that you had, knowing that you felt all pretty good signs about this Movistar Koi team, the power and position that they had shown you within the LEC, only to falter, trip, stumble, bumble, and roll themselves away out of this playoff series in a clean 3-0 from your boys at G2.
And, there were obviously some mistakes out of Koi, but it was, I still think, more G2 kind of being at a level that Koi wasn't ready for. We'll see if there's a rebound. I mean, there is a rebound opportunity for them down in that lower bracket. Two other LPL squads left on this list. Weibo haven't made their playoff debut yet. Top Esports bowed out. Well, pushed down at least. They lose in Game 5 to JDG, and I mean, they stole a couple of these games. There were some bad throws from JDG to even be getting to a Game 5.
Yeah, this is one of those ones where the takeaway, of course, is JDG getting that head-to-head, but you're not really separating either of these teams too much at that point from what you've seen in the LPL, and still, again, as you mentioned, waiting for WE, and I think that really is kind of the one that a lot of people outside of the expected, pieces towards the top of the LPL are looking at WE as one of these teams that can make things spicy, could make it interesting as a dark horse type of run if they catch fire throughout these playoffs.
Yeah, and they'll have an even longer journey now, as there is losers bracket, so it's not the end of the road for TES. They're sitting there gonna match up against WE to have to do the absolute full gauntlet through this Omega run of playoff brackets. The reason a squad like Weibo is outside of the top 10, they've been hanging out there for a little while, but it's Carmine Corp as kind of holding on still to top 10. They've been the number one EU team, I'm pretty sure the entire split, every single one of these weeks that we've done, but it was inevitable. Even when G2 was outside of the top 20, we were both saying it's inevitable that this team's going to crack into the top 10. Well, a perfect 7-0 start to playoffs through 3 rounds is enough for them to kick down that top 10 door in dramatic fashion to reclaim that top EU spot.
They're roaring through that door that's kicked down, man. The way that they stormed into these playoffs, really, again, one of these situations where maybe a little bit higher up in the standings, you could have envisioned something like this, but I think it was primed. And what we had seen throughout the rest of the LEC, as you mentioned, a squad like Carmine Corp, you really felt like it was a shifting territory. No longer maybe a slumping, underperforming G2 would go under the radar and be able to get it back together here in playoffs. You didn't think that was going to be it, being as far down as 7th in the LEC. Nope, it's a different type of challenge run this time around, and very much so a familiar feeling in these playoffs, seeing the type of domination and control that G2 is able to put out, seeing the performances from players like Broken Blade, from Skewmon in the jungle, big time difference makers for this team, where G2 is again looking much more so like the G2, the dominant old force at the top of the LEC.
And there's a reason this squad gets so much leeway when they have slow starts to splits and everything. It's because they can turn it on the flip of a switch when playoffs do roll around. And yeah, case in point, the 7-0 start. Sandwiched between those two EU squads, JDG, we alluded to, did get the Game 5 win against Top Esports, but wasn't exactly inspiring a ton of confidence going forward.
Things are looking better, more competent, and more cohesive for this JDG roster and how they are approaching these matches. Yes, that is absolutely the check mark you can give them. You can't on the second one as far as the full consistency throughout a match, and especially a best of series match where you are going to have it and you're pushing into these further rounds of Fearless Draft. I think that's where you start to see some of the cracks maybe be more apparent for this JDG roster. But as you said, they did get it done, so you got to give them marks and credit for that and where they are and keeping themselves still in a good position within these LPL playoffs.
2026 is just so wild, man, that we have this series multiple times, and every time I see like a 7K gold lead, even for a team that's heavily favored, and I still don't feel safe. And this series is case in point why you overpush once, you lose one team fight, and that's enough in this modern League of Legends for a squad to get back into the game, because we've seen it so many times in so many series across every region so far.
It's one of the, words momentum, right? And it seems like more than ever, it is something that you can build and capitalize on within a game, despite the momentum, despite advantages gained in building up snowballs. If you get that stop, you have much more avenues than I think at any other point in the past iterations of the game to continue to be that stop, continue to then build your own advantage and claw your way back into the game. Seeing that right through these playoffs. Doesn't matter the region, just latest example is in the LPL.
The dominant playoff start for G2, not quite enough to take that top Western spot, because it's just another clean 3-0 out of Cloud9. And really, if you're looking at the whole lock-in tournament body of work, there's not a blemish on this Cloud9 run yet.
Yeah, and it really has been impressive. Again, someone who thought we were going to and hoped that we were going to see improvements and growth week after week for this team since that early Kespa Cup showing. You couldn't have envisioned it going as well as it has so far this year in the LCS for the Cloud9 team. You're getting absolutely the very best out of APA. You've turned back the clock on multiple, and I mean multiple members. I'm talking at least Blabber and Sven. You could probably very easily throw Vulcans into that conversation as well when you're seeing the performances that you are getting out of them, the competency. So if you are this Cloud9 team, it is all daisies and sunshine for you sitting atop the Western team of these global power rankings.
And with great expectations comes great worry out of me for any LCS team heading finals, you can even put the disclaimer for that, but for whoever is going to be representing at first stand out of NA.
It's scary for multiple reasons. One of them obviously being the history of the region and seeing anytime you have been
not great,
remotely confident or upbeat about one of these squads that seems to be at that top level, only to very much so not be at that top level against international competition. And then as well, just, yes, you can be confident in all these successes and positive signs from Cloud9, but is that enough on that international stage? That can also be a very legitimate question in your mind still so far. And one, unfortunately, you're not going to get an answer until first stand if Cloud9 is the expected North American representative.
Or, if they flounder in finals and someone comes to take them. Or they level up. There could be a level up to do that. Last squad on this list is BLG, who somehow got knocked out of the top 5 despite not even playing games in 2 weeks at this point. But we'll issue the challenge for BLG. They have the easier side of the bracket than a squad like Anyone's Legend in this bracket. So they got to beat NIP and then the winner of Weibo IG. We need a dominant 6-0 out of BLG to be feeling like they have a chance in the winner's side of this bracket.
Yeah, and I'll call it out. Maybe it's some bias, or maybe it is just an unfair bad bounce for BLG to get that bit of a demotion at this point. But I do align with you in that sense where it's more so a challenge being issued out. And this is a BLG team that is more so than deserving of being issued challenges from the community to see what type of power level, what strength you truly are at. And I align with that when you're looking at these playoffs, you're looking at how you got here in the story to this point. If you are BLG, yeah, I want to see a dominant showing, a no questions, no whatsoevers when I see what you can put out on Summoner's Rift and the power position that you can put yourself in within the LPL. I think that absolutely, no question, has to be the challenge on, I think, anybody, never mind the most faithful of BLG supporters' minds heading towards this year's LPL playoffs.
And shockingly, with BLG outside of that top 5, you have 4 LCK teams in that top 5. And when that happens, you'd be going, feeling really great about them. Obviously, T1, Gen G leading the charge, but I know the promotion for, BNK was hovering near T1 after their upset. We locked them in together. And then D Plus does the unthinkable to beat them again. And now we have them leapfrogging into that 3 spot. T1 now all of a sudden is been pushed out of the VIP lounge, and BLG is holding T1 in that 6 spot. They're like, what do we do? Do we take their spot? We don't know what to do with them.
And in the way of shoving T1 out, I got some of their drink on my hand, and it's now left them all sticky, and we're left with the sticky conundrum on our hands of T1 being in this position where, in reality, if you really dive down into it and you really are examining these squads and what your expectation is come October, November, when we're aiming towards more so the World Championship, yeah, you're going to have a problem with this type of positioning, and having BFK and, having DK ahead of them. You can have these type of doubts about that. But where we are right now at this current time, and who is alive, who's still working, who's still playing and showing us things out on Summoner's Rift, it's not going to be T1 in Hong Kong. It's going to be BFX. It's going to be D plus Kia. And both of them deserve the credit for where they have gotten to at this point in the LCK. And unfortunately for T1 fans like myself, that comes at the cost of T1 and where they are and where they can find themselves in the power rankings. Now, it's not going to be as drastic as dropping them, way off the radar as they don't play games here for the next 2 months or so. But that's the problem. It's the next 2 months or so until you can actually get anything tangible to work towards this ranking for T1 and where they are and where they stand amongst who will be our first stand representatives and all that type of stuff. So you're left with the same sticky mess that all of us are left in our hands after T1 finds themselves on the outside looking in of the LCK.
That first stand trophy case gonna remain empty for Faker whenever they add these new tournaments. He's like, well, I gotta get that. But again, not gonna qualify for the second ever installment of it. And I think everyone's left going, what happened? Because T1 were so dominant, only second fiddle to Gen G in terms of dominance for the entirety of this first part of the LCK Cup. And it's the age-old conundrum. Did T1 really underperform? Was it a big step up from D Plus and BNK if you go one further upset? And it's a case of both, but which is more of it? Which are you more leaning? T1 kind of head scratching, what are they doing? Or D Plus going, I didn't know you had that in you.
Well, I'll take the angle of it's a little bit different in the underperformance for T1. I don't think it just is flat out just not, playing to the level that you are capable of or whatever type of thing. I think it's a question of rust versus rest in this situation. And I think the time away from that regular schedule that you're going through playing these matches, that's the difference. Being, seemingly asleep at the switch in most of these series, or their type of preparation and expectations for the meta adaptations or what will be played by either of these teams, you didn't see that come through the way that you normally do and can expect from T1 as they get to these serious playoff type of matches. That didn't come through. So I think it is simply, just a lack of things on the side of T1. But I will make that asterisk with that comment that there is absolutely a healthy percentage that is the level up from both BFX and when you're looking at DK and what they were able to do, what they were able to show out in those series, and especially how they were able to level up with the individual focus against what would be your opponent in T1 on the other side of Summoner's Rift. That absolutely can't be understated.
And listen, going back to the BFX series that they lost, it was 15 days in between matches for them. That's like longer than most of the off season was for T1. When you bring in like going from Worlds to Red Bull to, Kespa Cup, like they hardly had more than 15 days off consecutively, probably the whole off season. So 100% something they're not used to, but a team as experienced as they are with the coaching staff they have should be able to handle.
That's where I see the difference in the performance. Now, is that a viable, excuse or reason why? No, of course not. That's not a one for a middle tier team. Never mind a top tier prestigious organization and players that you put into the category that you do for T1. So yeah, even if it is part of what you can explain away with it, it still doesn't give you the validation for this performance or underperformance there, lack thereof.
And with the climb of those two, it's kind of you make way for a squad like anyone's Legend, who finally returned to the Rift. And there was no doubt, unlike the JDG TES back and forth series, they completely stomp World Elite 3-0. They had a 10K gold lead in all three of these games, and the game times 26 minutes, 26 minutes, 21 minutes. 21 minutes in 2026 League of Legends is crazy.
This is the other shoe dropping for BLG, finding themselves in the position that they're in, and the challenge issued to them that what we want to see from them, the domination in playoffs. Because yes, your buddies, anyone's Legend, your other competition, your rival here at the very top of the LPL is doing exactly that in their very first iteration of these playoffs. So that's going to be the standard that you're going to be held against. And of course, that is where it leads in. But yes, full credit to anyone's Legend, very much so. The roaring opening to their playoff run that you wanted to see from them, and I think a lot of people kind of also needed to really get over that final hurdle or hump to say, yes, you are my top dog within the LPL.
And, the final hurdle for this list is the same squad as always. The LCK is insane because you have the T1 upsets and DK and BFX are like, yeah, now we're playing each other, the big upsets. And then you go, oh yeah, there's still older brother. You got to play after T1 as Gen G. BFX, again, they had the competitive moments, but then the real Gen G wakes up and you go, man, upsetting T1 isn't enough. Well, it's enough to now represent at an international because you're going to get 2 LCK squads, but the top of the mountain of the LCK is just absurd, and it still remains Gen G hanging out.
It's so crazy because you can make all this progress. Yes, as you said, you can get by what is a world-class dominant dynasty organization in T1, and what's waiting for you? More homework. The extra exam after it all. This is like getting your exam, finishing it out, and being like, wow, I'm done in no time. This is great. Did you answer the backside pages too?
Yeah, there's an essay that you completely missed.
What do you mean the backside pages? Oh, and it's triple questioned on the backside of each paper. That is what Gen G hits you right when you think you've made the climb to the top. Oh, what's that? It's a whole nother mountain summit that you gotta go over. That is exactly what Gen G represents, the form of players like Canyon, Chovy, Ruler, what you're getting out of Duro and Keen still. Man, this is the threat of all threats in the League of Legends world.
I'm looking at Chovy's numbers purely with Gen G. The Gen G numbers. He has a 74.5% win rate. 3 out of 4 games this guy has won since he joined Gen G. That is, if you had that in solo queue, you would be far and away the greatest solo queue player of all time, like 2,000 points ahead of anyone in Challenger. And this guy's doing it in a tier 1 region internationally. It's insane. It's ludicrous.
It's craziness, but the lifestyle of Gen G and how things go on over there. But that is the power that you see. And I know for a lot of people, whatever happens here, it's the appetizer. I don't care about the LCK Cup. I don't care about first stand. Those are going to be whatever they are. And if you accomplish them as Gen G, cool, thumbs up, good for you. But it's not answering the question that a lot of people have still about this lineup and these individual players is, can you get it done for the big one? The biggest of them all, which is the World Championship. Yes, I would love to take care of the appetizer. Give me some shrimp tempura, get me a Caesar salad. It'll all be good. But you got to get to that main course if you are a Gen G. That still has to be the number one focus for the team.
And I really think, when this era of Gen G's done, especially if they don't win Worlds, in hindsight, everyone's going to go, yeah, even though we were all obsessed, got to win Worlds, still appreciate the dominance that this squad has had for multiple years.
I hope people can have that type of perspective. It's certainly something you see and not everyone gets at the core of it, even with traditional sports. When you are talking about these type of special, exceptional teams, groups of players that accomplish these type of things without the ultimate accomplishment, which is, of course, that championship trophy. And that is still something that is weighed heavier and more respected than anything else, but that doesn't mean that it is the be-all and end-all, only thing that is up for grabs or that is in consideration for these type of things. And yes, I hope people can realize that with Gen G, but maybe We don't have to have that conversation, and they do get it done at some point.
I mean, then they just go into another stratosphere for sure. But for now, that stratosphere is the 6th straight week sitting as that number 1 squad on the global rankings. But that is it today for League on Lock. Eric and Mark here with you, absolute stunners. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll catch you on that flippity flip.